hours ago, or 6 years ago.
6 hours ago.
6 hours.
Real new.
You're definitely right on the beginning of the road.
The camera, right? I started at Prime, and I became an owner-operator when I paid off my truck 2.5 years ago, and been trucking ever since.
Hello, my name is Wesley Coleman, Los Angeles, California. Been driving for 33 years. I've recently become an owner-operator 2 years ago. Looking to be going to independent coming up this year. Putting 2 other trucks on besides this one. So, yeah, it's been great. Started driving ever since the military.
Annie Youngblood. I'm a market analyst for Comdata, focusing on trying to understand the market better so that we can bring solutions to support y'all's business.
Tell us a little bit more about what Comdata actually is.
So Comdata is a payments provider for the trucking space. We provide the solutions that over-the-road truckers need to be successful, whether it's credit, access to discounts, fuel cards, compliance, factoring, et cetera. So we're here to make sure that, fleets with less than 100 trucks in the United States have what they need to run.
Yeah.
I'm Shane Ferris. I'm the owner of Green Miles. Started trucking in 1999 after getting less than stellar treatment by a couple of owner-operator companies I ran for. I went to work for a bigger company and ran as a company driver for them for 6 months, and then started my path to being owner-operator. 4 years ago, we started Green Miles, and we're building a home for owner-operators that want to have more control over their destinies.
I'd like to start off. Will you start us off,
Sure.
Big C, with when the path. So it starts off as being a company driver, maybe their training company or something like that. How do you see it going beyond that?
Well, after you're a company driver, as for myself, I'll speak for myself. I was a company driver for 20 years. Okay, been out there doing that, and, doing the things you're supposed to do. But after that, I ended up going into becoming a owner-operator, and my next step will be independent. So that means everything's, it's like he started his own business, the same situation. Being a owner-operator, you still have your own business. I have my LLC. I formed everything. I have my own DOT number, but I just don't use it yet. So after that, just hitting the independent after that.
So basically, what it is, you start off like a company driver or something, training, learning how to be a driver. Sure. Then the next step is you would become like you'd be an owner-operator, leasing a truck or buying your own truck, running under somebody else's own authority. And then you become an independent owner-operator where you have your own authority and run on your own authority.
Yes.
Right. You're the boss. It's your business totally, right?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So in that, what do you think is the hardest step along the way? Is it that first step from the company driver moving to the leasing the truck or buying a truck? Or
yeah, I think personally, the biggest steps are psychological. And when you take that step from being a company driver and having the company kind of have you covered on everything, if you make a mistake, it's on their dime. If you deliver late, hey, you're going to get your hand slapped or whatever, but it's not going to affect you that badly. Taking that psychological step and owning what you do and becoming an owner-operator is truly probably the biggest step.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things that a lot of people should think about is knowing the steps like we're going to talk about today, but also knowing yourself and knowing your capacity, knowing what you can do. You can step up and you can be a brand new person in this industry, and you can put some money down and you can lease a truck, or you can't really buy a truck in the first couple of years unless you pay cash. But you can start off as an owner-operator. You don't have to become a company driver.
Right.
The failure rate is very high. So in order, to know where you're coming in is the most important part. If you need that time to become a company driver and build your way up, know yourself, know what you can do, know where you need to go, and educate yourself. It's not like somebody's just going to hand you a book and say, hey, this is how you become an owner-operator. This is how you get your authority. You have to do all that work yourself.
I'll add to that, just based on some of the folks that we talk, we see most of the folks going out on their own, waiting 20 years. They've driven for, on average, 3 to 4 different fleets. They've got between 15 and 20 years of experience in the industry. So putting that time in and understanding that seems to be a more traditional path. But I guess I'm wondering...
Kind of a loyal well guy. But at the time, I had the time to do the research. It's very important to do the research. Find out if it's something you want to do. You need to take that time and invest it into what you're thinking about doing. To jump into it blindly, I think would be a very big mistake, because if your home is not right, if everything in the house is not right, then you're going to have problems going down the road. You're not home, your wife miss you, your kids miss you, you got obligations. You just can't think about only yourself out there doing what you want to do. So what I did the research for like almost 2 years. And my son told me, said, Dad, you wanted to go on the road a long time ago, but you stayed there for us. I said, well, yeah, that's what I did, because I got a chance to coach and do all the things that dads would love to do. But a lot of these guys miss that. They never get a chance to do it. But the research played a very big part for me. I was able to do that, do the research, find out what was important, what I needed, how to get my savings right, have the money I needed to go out on the road and do that. Because if you have a war chest, you'll hear me say it a lot, a war chest means that I can go to battle for anything that comes up in my life. I got the money to replace the engine. I got the money if I break down. I've got everything covered so that my wife and my kids aren't suffering. So those are the things I had to get together.
In terms of, managing your money, so your expectations of what kind of earnings you're going to have, because I think that's really, it's a business first off, right? When you become an owner and operator, you're a truck driver and you're a businessman,
Yes.
right? So what kind of financial expectations would you set, or would you think be realistic?
Well, and all right, and a lot of it's depending upon your threshold, your tolerance to risk. Like was stated earlier, you've got family that depends on you, then you need to have more cash reserves set back to control that. One of my owner-operators that broke off and became independent several months ago, he's a single man. He doesn't, if anything goes wrong, the only one that's going to hurt from it is him. He was able to do it, granted, he did have funds set aside, but he was able to do it with much less. As a bare minimum, I would say if you want to have enough money set aside to cover your household expenses for at least 3 months. You need to have enough set aside to where if you blow your engine in your truck, you either have enough to replace that engine or put a down payment on another truck or buy a cheap truck and keep rolling. And I say you need to have this. It doesn't necessarily have to be cash. It can be available through credit. Mm-hmm. If you've got $50,000 in available credit that can float you during that time, that you can throw an engine in a truck and then pay it off over the next year and a half, great. But if your credit's not to that level, then yes, you need the cash.
I got a question for you. So you've got your money put aside. How much does the truck cost?
My truck costs $149,000.
So how much does it cost to run? What kind of freight do you need to get? What kind of rate do you need to get to be able to make sure that you're going to be able to make those payments? And how much, we were talking about this earlier, how much do you have to put aside, especially at the beginning, do you think? So that, let's say you take 25, 20, 30% of what you're bringing in, and you're putting that aside right away, right?
Well, you got to definitely do 15 to 20% just for Uncle Sam. That's
right.
For sure, because when you become an independent operator, you are your own business, and that's one thing that we have to establish. You are your own business. Either you're going to be paying as a business under your own Social Security number, or you're going to get a TIN whenever you incorporate or do an LLC and everything. But the prices vary. We go by cents per mile or dollars per mile. Some people say $1.02, $1.05. They forget to pay themselves.
Right.
So, $1.50 a mile would be a good starting point to know that that's the bare minimum that you have to float to average. Now, you might have some weeks where you make $2.50, $2.75 a mile in a bad economy, but then what about those weeks that you go home? You're getting 0 cents per mile. What about those weeks getting out of the bad area? You might only make $1.15 a mile, but it has to average out above what the minimum standard is for you to operate that truck. And you have to include paying your driver, which is you. So, you have to look at that.
The ATR, the American Transportation Research, does all these studies. They have a booth here at MATS, and they say, on average, it costs $190,000 in 1 year to run a truck. That's fuel, that's wages, that's maintenance, that's insurance. That's a lot of money.
Right.
And so to your point, making sure that you're paying yourself and averaging that, plus you add in whether or not you bought the truck and you're making payments, lease, it can certainly add up.
So the next thing is we kind of figured out basically how much money you need to put and set aside. Now, you've recently gone through the process in the last year or two. There's a lot of steps in terms of all the regulations and all the compliance that you need to do, huh?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We have, during the compliance part, I actually hired a company to do that for me.
Okay.
And made it easy because I knew nothing about it. And I'm very humble enough to say I don't know something I don't know. I'm going to leave it alone. But we, as far as the point of, making that step, I took my retirement that I had earned from the other company. I took that, I took 50% of it, put the rest of it back up. Now, what I did when that 50% took care of the cost of the truck, okay, which in my case is only $50,000. So it was
You
good
didn't
for me to
get that
get
fancy
started.
truck that he got.
Oh yeah, I got a third of what he's got over there. And but my reason for it was because of the fact I didn't want a large payment.
Right.
I did not want that, and I wanted to get as much I want. See, I don't want to work for my truck. I want to be able to go out there and do what I got to do.
The truck to work for
and the
you.
truck to work for me.
Yeah.
It's been a blessing so far. I have not had that much of an issue right now. So have a low payment for me means I get the joy. And I do. I go to Bahamas. I go to Jamaica. I travel too much. I love vacation. Okay, that's my middle name. So I
Take
love
me
getting
with
out.
you.
Get out and go where I got to go.
So, okay, so you say you got an outside company to help you with that,
Yes.
right? So, but what are all the steps? I know that, you have like IFTA reporting and 2250, you got, all these other things. You have driver compliance,
Right.
right? So,
And probably the most problematic items we have to deal with is driver compliance. The DOT is very, very strict on your driver qualifications, work histories, everything that they consider to keep the road safe. Your maintenance histories, your truck, your conditions, that falls probably second in it. Beyond that, a lot of your 2290s, your IFTA stuff, that's just quarterly reporting. And in years past, they were kind of a pain in the neck. But quite honestly, with ELD implementation,
so there are some positives to ELDs?
Everybody's being tracked all the time now, so we
My
know
goodness.
how many miles you're running. Fuel cards take care of the fuel part of it. So ultimately, with the ELD tracking and the fuel cards, you just download those into a program, and it tells you how much you got to pay.
Oh, that's good.
A couple of aspects that a lot of people don't think about till they're halfway through it or almost to the end and they have their authority and everything is branding, marketing, and getting yourself established. In the business world, nobody really wants to look at you if you haven't even done one business tax return. And this is getting back to the banking thing, it's getting back to the financing thing and everything else. If you're going to protect yourself by creating an LLC or you're going to you become a real C company or whatever, you have to know what those things are, but you have to understand the impact in the business industry. So if you're planning on doing it, my first advice would be establish your LLC if you're going to do one. Get started as soon as you can doing a business tax return because everybody's going to want to see 2 years.
Yeah.
So the farther you go while you're preparing yourself, getting those first 2 years on those tax returns, the farther forward you'll be. Plus, it gives you 2 years to find out what kind of brand you want, like Green Miles, came up with their branding a few years ago. And you have to start putting your name on stuff and establish your your phone number, establish your domain if you want a domain. All of those things, get on Facebook, get a group, get a page going, make sure that that's established. All of those things you have to be thinking about now instead of later, because later it might be taken up. Later, sometime will be too late.
So, when you talk about people wanting to do business with you, what kind of is that like shippers? Is that truck? Parts? Getting service on your truck? Is it
Everything.
Everything.
Everything?
Yeah.
Everything. If you want to get a business credit card, You have to have it established. That's how you start off.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to buy a truck, there's no way 6 years ago I could have just went and purchased the truck. So I did the lease purchase thing. Everybody says, don't do it. I'm like, if you're going to do it, know what you're doing when you do it.
Right, okay.
But in the first 3 or 4 years, you're not going to be able to finance a truck as a brand new driver. They'll laugh at you.
Right.
Not only will they just say, no, sorry, dude, they'll be laughing as they say it.
Right.
So that's the one reality that everybody has to face right up front. If you're new, you're not going to get financed.
You're going to have to pay your dues somehow.
Yep.
Right, exactly.
You know, one
We're
thing-
not talking about double-digit profit margins early on. I mean, most owner-operators, most small fleets are around 5%, and that's being fairly,
Optimistic?
So it's not something that you're going to jump into
Okay.
gangbusters and make all this money right off the bat.
So let's rewind. Let's say that I'm a guy, I'm a company driver, I've been driving for a while, and I'm thinking of becoming an owner-operator, right? And what steps, for instance, if credit, you know about this, leasing, what's the best, where do I go to get good information about these things? Maybe you can tell us a bit about credit and how to establish that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've all said it. We talked a little bit about this yesterday too, but it takes money to make money. And that's a very simple thing. You've got access to cash, whether it's liquid cash that you can put up. If you're not willing to do that and you want to establish credit, credit's a long-term play. You can't just wake up one day with credit. So if it's something that you're thinking about, you said you've been researching this for 2 years. Mm-hmm. During those 2 years, maybe somebody is using a personal credit card, they're establishing their credit, they're getting to the point where they're maybe not relying so much on cash in case they want to scale and grow, because you can't scale and grow with no money.
Okay, if I've got no credit whatsoever, no credit history, how do I start?
Well, it'd help by winning the Mega Millions first.
Excuse me?
Win the lottery.
Yeah, come on.
Access to cash, right?
I'm going
I mean,
to give a shameless plug
Okay.
here.
yeah.
Quite honestly, if you've got no credit, but you've got a really good work history, and you're wanting to make that move, there are options out there. For example, Ron talked about Prime and their lease purchase program.
Right.
We offer a lease purchase program for very select few drivers. We're not big enough to go out and buy 20 trucks and just make them available to everybody. So we've got to be a lot more selective. But we deal with used trucks and make it a lot easier. Not to mention, if you've got no credit, there are plenty of older trucks on the market. You can go out and buy a pre-emission truck for $10,000. Hopefully you're more mechanically inclined if you go that route, because you will be working on it a lot more.
And you'll pay more taxes on it too these days.
Well, what I was kind of getting at, do I get a card like with a bank or something like that I start using?
Yeah, I mean, it's a personal preference, right? But the way that I would do it, and I haven't been in this industry very long, is I would get a card and start using it. I would establish my credit. The only way that you can establish credit is by using credit.
Okay.
It's the only way that you can do it. So you've got to create some sort of history. So as you're researching this option, as this is something that you're exploring doing, I would encourage that, unless, like we said, you've got access to cash that you want to use. That's also a possibility. But regardless of where the funding source is, there needs to be a funding source.
Yes.
Well, but the thing I think is really good is if you have a way to find, fuel is like your big expense. Mm-hmm. So if you can have a credit card or something like that, so that you're not, worrying about, each load, you have to have cash to buy the next.
And
Not only that, but most loads that you're going to haul on the spot market, most brokers will offer advances on the load once it's picked up. Mm-hmm. It is going to cost you. I mean, honestly, if you have credit, you're better off using the credit because the credit's going to be less expensive. There is a premium to getting advances.
Right. Yeah.
The one thing I want to add to what you were saying was this: that if you really want to get like you said, get a card. There's a lot of companies out there. Wells Fargo is one of them that will give you $5,000 if you put a $5,000 secure credit card down.
Yeah.
Do it that way if you can. $1,000, whatever. Like they said, get it going, get it rolling. Because when I was doing my research, luckily I had did enough to find out that I was going to have to be a guarantor. So being a guarantor, my credit had to be sharp.
your personal credit.
My personal credit. So my personal credit was good. So when I walked into Rush and I said, hey, I want to go ahead and get this truck. And they were like, okay, well, this is what we're going to need down. They gave me the minimum. I gave them 30% more than what they asked for, so I can get it paid off quicker. Because to run with no payment, and I've been a lucky one. I haven't had the breakdowns and all that. Everything's been good for me. Thank you. Okay. So, you know, but we know these things. We know these things happen. So being financially prepared now. In the meantime, I did my LLC, did my EIN, got everything established. Right now, while I'm still running where I'm running now, I'm going to have my DOT and everything done. Yeah. So therefore, once when I'm doing this, I'm talking to the owners. Hey, I want to run a couple loads under my own, but run it with you, and try to get them to put that into where I look good. Right. You know, as far as my EIN, because isn't it true that you have to be a year under your own authority before people will start trusting you and making those and getting those loads?
To a point, yes. Most brokers are going to be somewhere in the 6 month. There are some of the smaller brokers that have some of the better freight are going to be out at the year range. I was speaking to some of the gentlemen here earlier today. It seems Uber is one of the few brokers out there that'll actually load you day one.
Right. Yeah, as long as you've got satisfactory safety scores. And they look at the Safer on web or safer.gov, right? And look up the numbers there. As long as you've got satisfactory numbers there, they give you a shot at it. Yeah.
While we're talking about credit and everything, I'd like to address the issue of leases. Okay,
that's the next step. So
it's a very bad word in this industry because so many people have been taken advantage of. Okay, but let me give you a couple of vignettes. New startup in the restaurant industry. Let's say we're getting ready to start a little chain, a little franchise. Okay, what does that franchise do whenever they establish their first 2 franchise stores? They lease all of the equipment. Yep. They lease the tables and chairs. They lease the cash registers. They lease everything. And it is a mechanism that can be used for a higher risk situation. Because if it fails, the lease stuff goes back. Right. So it's the same in the trucking industry. You just have to know how to keep yourself from getting taken advantage of. I started out at Prime. They have 2 different programs. They have a regular lease. You can lease a piece of equipment for 3 years, turn it in, go grab the next piece of equipment. You can run your business like that all the time. Or you can put money down and you can do the lease purchase and you own the truck at the end. It's no different than the restaurant. You know, leasing the equipment, it's time to upgrade because we've been doing good for the past 3 years. Now let's go ahead and buy the new equipment.
Right, you replace it with the money you made.
Right, yeah. And there's no reason to do that, but there are a lot of shysters in the business that cause the stigma to happen, and all they want to do is they want to put the next guy in the truck. So you have to read the contract. You have to get a lawyer to read the contract. You have to say, hey, what does this mean to me, and what are my responsibilities to the contract, to the person that I'm contracting with? If you don't take those responsibilities seriously, you're not a serious business person.
Right.
So you're going to get taken advantage of.
Are there like communities that talk to the, you know, I got the questions. Who do I trust if I want to go and, you know, what leasing company I would want to work with?
Well, the one thing that I did, I'm glad about our group. There's a lot of groups out there on social media that will tell you the truth. You've got our group, Solving Roads. You've got rates per mile. You know, this is where you need to go. Use your social media. Find out from the experienced guys who have walked that mile. See, if you're trying to walk somewhere and you have never jumped off the porch, how you gonna walk?
They used to have a map.
Yeah, you gotta have a map. And these groups, these social medias, these groups, this brotherhood, I'm gonna use it that way, have gotten together and give you that information. And we like to have people come through that's going to give us more information. We're always learning, and we're always encouraging. If you have a question about how to file in Ohio, how to get things started in Ohio, we have people that are from Ohio who have done it. We have people from California, people from Indiana, people from Florida. So you have all the resources out there. Don't think that you're alone.
You were saying that you were just talking to somebody on the plane down here, right?
Yes. Yeah. I met a guy named Mr. Burkett, right? And we got off of Southwest together, and I'm looking at all the truck drivers. I know I'm going to the truck show, and I'm going, yeah, I wonder if he's a driver. Yeah, he's a driver. Yeah, he's a driver. He's a driver. And all of a sudden, I said, wait a minute. And I saw the guy. We were both at Budget Line getting our cars, and he said, Hey, how's it going? We started talking. I found out this guy owns like 10 or 11 trucks, okay? But he's got them in different, he's diversified, which I think is very smart.
Right,
He
yeah.
has 3 trucks in one area doing rock and sand or whatever. He has four reefer trucks. He has a couple of dry vans. And I'm sitting there going like, wow, okay. And so I got his information, networking. That's what we're all here to do, network in some way, shape, or form. And next thing I know, this guy said, hey, any questions you have, give me a call.
Yep.
He's younger than me. I'm going to call him. You know, I don't want to be in the bankrupt line.
I'll throw a couple names out there. Kevin Rutherford is a very big name in the radio industry. He's written a very good book. It's a little expensive, but if you're not going to invest in yourself, you know, why waste the time? Very good book on the different steps, exactly what we're talking about. That's what he's geared his radio show towards.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of calls to help people out with stuff like that. So that's one source. You got Road Dog Radio. They have Landline now on there. They have a whole bunch of different shows that you can call in and ask questions. They have different segments where they talk about everything trucking. So that's another resource. There are tons of Facebook groups.
Yeah.
Some very good ones, including Rate Per Mile Masters, and you got one too.
Solid Roads.
Solid Roads.
That's two
And
very good
there-
ones, yes.
We had some classes, some conferences, like the CMC. A lot of people would have heard of that, and now we have a new one coming up called You Drive You, which was up in Kansas City this past year, and it should be coming up again. I don't have the dates or anything, but those are a few days where you commit to going. A couple hundred drivers that are at that level, and you talk to them, and you get all of this information, and you move up.
So basically what we're talking about is this step, we've moved from a company driver to a owner-operator that has his own truck, but he's signing up under somebody else's authority.
Right.
Right? And that's what
That's what we promote.
Yeah.
We honestly, everybody wants to get to that point where they're completely independent and they're doing their own thing. We personally have created an intermediate step that most people are actually happy with,
Right.
where they're in essence running their whole business, or at least everything that affects them financially, and we kind of handle the back office stuff that
Right. And there's a lot-
distracts from making money.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things to take care of. Lots of little details. I heard a story about an owner operator who first got his authority, and then he suddenly realized, I haven't drug tested myself. Right? So he wasn't in compliance and had to park his truck for 3 days while the drug test came through. Right? So it's like, there's lots of details. So it really pays to have, somebody that specializes in doing that, because it's enough work to run the truck.
Yep.
It
Let me
absolutely
throw
is.
another term out there: revenue stream.
Yeah.
Every business person should know what a revenue stream is, because that's where you get your money from. And once you lease on to somebody else's carrier, there are various levels where you have control of your revenue stream. And
Good
that's one of
point,
the
good
things
point.
that people really need to look at. You go to John Krishner, you go to Schneider, you go to Swift as an independent, as an owner-operator, you're not going to have that much control of your revenue stream. Yes, they give you the choice to take the load or sit until they give you another load, or, however they model their business. At Green Miles, you have full control of your revenue stream, because you are the man or woman who's going to be making the phone calls to the broker. You're going to be making the phone calls to the shippers and receivers. You're going to be setting up everything is yours. All the way through to the end of the load, you send the bills in, and then we at Green Miles, we take care of the rest, getting it invoiced, getting everything taken care of, getting paid on the other side. So it's about as free and as about as in control of your revenue stream as you can be as an owner-operator leased on to someone else. And that's very hard to find out here in the industry.
I would say the fact that with Dana companies, where I signed my truck on too, they take care of everything for us. That's why, as far as dealing with, and they do use ComData. I just looked at my wallet.
Our company.
I heard that name somewhere before, but no, they take care of everything for us.
Right.
If they take care of everything, all we got to do is just drive. And luckily, what I don't like, I'm not going to say what I don't like about it, but there are some things that I absolutely adore about them. And one of the things is not having to ever worry about your money. Okay? when that money comes through, that is a very comfortable feeling. If you know that you've ran this load so many times and they call you the day before and saying, hey, or they'll send an email, this is what your settlement's going to be tomorrow. Is there any questions? You're going like, who is this?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you calling? Why are you contacting me?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking at them going, wow, that's just that personal touch.
Right.
That's that next step where we would all like to be, but not knowing that going into payday, it's a done deal. It's a wrap.
Money's
Don't
there.
worry about it. Keep on running. You know.
And I think it's important, and we touched on it a little bit, and we've talked about your relationships with shippers and brokers and whether you're leased or not leased, but it is also important to find trusted people that can help you from a solution standpoint, whether it's somebody filing your IFTA, whether it's a fuel card program, to know that, especially if you're not, if you're leased on or if you're using their fuel card versus your fuel card, if you're trying to access their discounts or you want your own discounts, these are other things that you need to consider. You know, when you're out over the road, if you don't have somebody doing your IFTA for you and you're completely independent, you're going to have to do your IFTA yourself. I mean, it's just the reality.
There's a lot of people that do that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that do that. I've met tons of people that do exactly what you're talking about. They handle it from the truck. That's their office. They make everything happen. They be out for 6 months, but they make everything happen right then and there.
Right.
You know, and like one of my friends, he has a car hauler. You know, and he took after running the car hauler for so long, he then turned around and he got you to come on for 10%, you to come on for 10%, you to come on for 10%. Everybody was 10% coming in. He had like 15 people.
There you go. Yeah.
I said, well, man, you're only 31 years old. What are you doing? You know? So, yeah, I got to go have lunch with that guy.
Yeah, so that is that next step. That what you're talking about is the guy that's the fully independent guy.
Fully independent.
That, and he has to be able to be that businessman that's well organized, have all the stuff in, and most likely in the truck,
Yeah.
right, and be doing it all from there. There are, there are other services that the guy could use at that point that help that, or is it just
There are.
I would like to go back just one step and
go back a step? Okay.
and establish something about the words. Okay, when you get your authority, you are a carrier.
Right,
Okay,
exactly.
whether you
Yes.
have one truck or whether you have 20 trucks as a
Right.
fleet, you are a carrier. You're no longer an owner-operator. You're the
A
next
carrier,
step.
right.
So an owner-operator is someone who owns their own truck or is buying their own truck and is leased on to someone else.
Yeah.
And that's the next step below, having your authority and being an actual carrier. And all that compliance comes with that word carrier.
Right.
So once you're called a carrier, that's when you got to do your analysis. That's when you have to do the IFTA. That's when you have to get your plates, pay your IRP, all these little words that I'm throwing out there.
Yeah.
And, you have to make sure that all of your files are in order and available. If they say we want to inspect your maintenance records, your employment records, and your medical records, you have to have all that ready to scan and send to them now, because they're not going to come to your office
Right,
anymore.
exactly, yeah.
A lot of it's scanning. So as an owner-operator, yeah, you're giving up 15%, 10%. At Landstar, it's 33%, which I think is kind of crazy. Sorry about that. But, you're paying for a service, and if you're giving up 33% of the revenue, you better be getting some heck of a good service for that revenue.
Yes.
Or good.
And that's a thought that you have to be giving up when you're an owner-operator. What are they doing for me, and is it worth the amount of money that they're cutting from the loads that I'm running?
Yeah,
Another thing to consider too, if you're an owner-operator leased to a carrier, 33% is a big number. Okay, 10%, as was made over, is a really small number. It's like a shoestring budget, really.
Right.
You have to consider that carrier is your support network.
Yeah.
When you're looking at what you're paying for, you're also paying a percentage of that revenue to keep that carrier solvent, to keep that carrier secure, so that when something goes wrong, when an accident happens, when something comes through and it costs thousands upon thousands of dollars, well, if the carrier's running on a shoestring budget, guess what? Your carrier's not going to be there anymore.
Yeah. So you're pooling
support
some part of your resources, or the revenue that you're making, part of it going to the carrier. You're pooling it for the carrier to be strong because they provide all these services to you.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Correct. Yep, and that's really important. And looking at different carriers, I was walking through the West Wing here, and I want to go up to all the different carriers that want you to lease on as owner-operators and get to know what services are you giving me for what percent. You know, how much coverage do I have
Right.
for what you're taking? And that's a really important part of making that decision once you own a truck and you say, where am I going to put it?
Yeah, and, you know, I just wanted to reiterate real quick that 10%, like with him, you have to have your own full unit
Sure.
when you come on.
Sure.
You know, so the only thing, so that's your own insurance, your own everything. You're just running under his DOT
Well,
number.
Oh, so, okay.
So that's
Yeah.
all they're doing.
I can tell you, as a carrier, you cannot bring on an actual owner-operator and them supply all of their own insurance. Your cargo and liability insurance has to be supplied by the carrier.
Exactly.
They can charge it back to the owner-operator, and
Right.
that's the way most 10% operations work.
Okay.
They charge it back to the owner-operator, and so they are covering all their expenses. They just can't go out and get it themselves.
And that's something to look at. You want to make sure that your business partners are strong. There's another word for you,
Yeah.
business partners. When you work with a broker, they're a business partner. They're not your adversary. When you lease on to a company with your truck, you're their business partner. They're your business partner. You want them to be strong. You want them to have a good reputation. You want to enhance that reputation. You want to represent that company well. You know, just like when you become a carrier and you bring on your first employee, you want them to represent you and your brand very well as well.
Right.
Right.
And if that's missing, then, and I think there's a lot of grumbling in the industry that causes that to be missing, but that has to be there or else it just devolves into a really horrible situation.
Yeah, there has to be a trust, and it was said before, trust. You know, if you have a trust, the transparency brings trust.
Right.
I want to make sure that word's put out there.
Yeah.
Transparency.
Absolutely.
We don't
Yes.
see that in the industry. Okay. If that transparency there, the trust it builds. It builds. So therefore, if I that I'm running for Green Mile has shown me what my confirmation rate is. And I've been trustworthy all this time. I have no reason to doubt them.
Right.
But when that transparency is not there, doubt creeps in.
So what you're saying is when you book a load,
Uh-huh.
you know what the
what the
settlement's
rate
going to
is.
be, right?
Yes.
So what do you think about not showing it for
Well,
the
to
driver?
me, it's just not an option. I mean, the way our company runs, Ron transitioning from the road to driver, when there's a load booked, he's actually booking the load. He's negotiating his own rate. I don't even know what's going on until after he's done negotiating it. And he tells me, I agreed to haul this load for this amount of money. They're sending you the documentation for it.
And in addition to trust, we talked a little bit about this before, but reliability.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is huge. You know, 99% of the time is not good enough in this industry, as we said.
Right.
So knowing that when I, you know, not just when I say I'm going to deliver something, but when I go to pick up a load, that the load's going to be there.
Right.
That's something that
Right.
I'm not going to lose out.
Well, you
And
know,
I have a surprise for everybody. It's not hard. This industry has such a low bar of excellence that if you are on time and you're clean,
Except at Green Mile.
if you're on time and you're clean and you speak clearly and you do what you're going to do, you say what you're going to do,
Yeah.
you're a superstar.
You're in the top 5% of the industry.
You're already at
And
the-
when you
you're already
have a
at the top
problem,
of the-
you admit it. You don't.
You
kinda-
got it.
Something's going wrong. Okay, I got a problem. I reach out and get help.
Absolutely.
And that's the segue to the second part. If you communicate well,
right.
Yeah.
you know, I was always told in the Army that a bag of poop only gets smellier over time. Okay?
Yeah.
Same with the problem. It only gets worse
Can't
over
argue with
time.
that.
Yeah.
As soon as it comes up, communicate. Let everybody know, hey, this is what's going on. This is what I can do to fix it. Can you help me get this done or get that done? And if you do these things and they're not hard things, you're a superstar. And brokers will actually call you and more. They'll thank you more. They'll send letters saying, you know, praising you, you know, how great you did on that load or
Right.
fixing that problem or whatever. It's amazing that's all it takes.
You know, one of the things you're talking about liability, I wanted to say this, that when we look at the liability out there, the drivers or the owners are taking more of the risk,
Yes.
okay? And they get less of the reward. When you look at the fact, and that's just the way the system is set up right now, if it flipped where we were getting more of the reward, right, because of the liability that we're taking, okay? It seems to be that those that are brokering out there, this is what I'm hearing out here. I have not experienced this myself, but when you hear that there is, that the brokers are taking too much, and they're not doing anything but getting that load for you, That seems to be a aggravating problem out there. What do you guys think?
Playing the devil's advocate here,
Okay.
anytime you see somebody doing something, it appears to be easier than it actually is.
Isn't that the truth?
You know, I can go, if I were a broker, I'd look at a truck driver and say, hey, you know, I can tell you right now, I've driven a truck. I can teach any monkey out there to drive a truck. Now, to do it profitably and do it safely, that might be a different story.
Right.
But you don't see that. You see a guy behind the wheel driving a truck. You go to a broker, they're not just picking up a phone and calling somebody, hey, I need this load, and pick up another, make $500 off of this transaction. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of expense to maintain that relationship, to service that customer, to make sure that customer's happy and getting what they want. They're actually going through and they're taking a lot of weight off that shipper or that receiver's shoulders, a lot of work off of their plate to help them move their freight at a lower cost point or a lower expense to them. Now, the expense may be man hours. It may not be actual dollar for dollar. It may be the expense of, you know, frustration, you know, which when you're taking, you know, frustration out of the equation for somebody, that comes at a very high value.
I can add to that. It's the wrong business mindset, first of all. If you think that somebody's scamming you, then look into the scam. If you're being pushed around by market forces, you can't use the government, you can't use stuff to try to control the market. When people try to control the market, it really aberrates the market and it causes more and more problems everywhere else. A free market is the best market, and you capitalize on it. The whole reason that we're going to make buttloads of money over the next few years is because ours is the only industry in the United States that is as free as it is.
Right.
I mean, completely throttle wide open free. There's very little regulations on what you can and can't do, how you can get it done. So to say, oh, he kept more money, well, why did he keep more money? Is it because you can't negotiate well? Is it because you didn't know the market you were in?
That's it.
Is it because you didn't make a good decision? So as a business person, everything is your fault.
Yeah,
And that's something you need to really focus on.
This mindset of somebody else is doing something wrong. No. Everything that you do is your fault. And if you put yourself in a bad area and you didn't get your money going in,
Yeah, that's where you
it's
go.
your fault.
Right.
If you misjudged the market and it fell flat on the day you were getting ready to make $1 million, it's your fault. You know, so yeah, that's just the wrong mindset, and we try to stay away from that mindset.
Well, see, the one thing that we found, that the one of the places where I left, where I used to run for, okay, I'm gonna leave their name out of it because but we found out, and this is what all the owner-operators, all those that were signed on to them, Tank Line, we signed on to them and found out the fact that they were taking the extra $1,500 off the top of the run.
Okay.
A lot of us didn't know because this company will take you without having that much owner-operator experience. They'll pull you right on in off the street.
Sure.
You can be an owner-operator, you can be a driver and say, oh, you want to be an owner-operator? Come on in.
Yeah.
And they bring you in, and I think that's a predator situation, like you were saying.
Yep.
That's a predator situation. It's not, but what happens is that you give brokerage a bad name at times. When you go here, you see something happen, then you hear about something. And this you know for sure because you're starting to see the paperwork. You go to another company, run the same line, and you find out, how did I get $1,500 off this run? It's the same amount of miles. It's preloaded. I didn't do any work. But
Yep.
you're getting that money.
It's
But then
your,
again, you
it's
look
your
at
fault.
it, and once that was discovered,
Oh, I left.
they no longer had your service.
That's right. I
Right.
was gone. Loyalty was out
I
the
mean,
door.
it's ultimately anybody that's going to be dishonest or disingenuous like that, they're not going to have the growth potential that somebody that can be open and honest and builds a very good reputation will have.
And who are they going to get? What people are they going to get? They're going to get those people that either aren't educating themselves or don't care enough to educate themselves and move forward as a business person. They're not going to study up the market. They're not going to ask the questions. Anybody who's an owner-operator, you have every right to walk into the office and say, show me the bills. Show me how much you got paid for that. And they have to show you. Now, they may show you the door after that, but they have to show you.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Part
If
of
they
the
show
Federal
you the
Truth in
door
Leasing
after
Act.
that, maybe you shouldn't have been
Yeah.
there in the first place.
Right.
So there's always a positive
I've got a
mindset.
question for you guys. That's okay.
Yeah, totally.
Trying to learn here too. We're talking about transparency. How much do you guys see technology playing a role in that?
I was gonna ask that
I mean,
question, yeah.
we did a survey, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, I think, and we found that 75% of drivers are looking for more automated ways to book loads. I mean, do you guys see technology fixing that or helping that transparency?
Technology
Or is
can
it-
go either
I
way.
think it's a whole
Yeah, I
different,
think- yeah.
complete
I think it's
issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes, understand something, technology is good. Too much technology sometimes is bad.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to put that there. But let's look at, I think it's called LoadX or something out of LoadX or something like that. It's out of Australia. They were on the Facebook business page, not Facebook, but Fox Business channel, right? This guy started 2 years ago. Okay, all it does is automate the fact that one, you get the load's there, you book it, you
Right.
look at it, if you want to take it or you don't want to take it.
Right.
And that's it. In
Sounds
2
like Uber
years-
Freight. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's 2 years. It's 2 years. Just 2 years, grossing $100 million.
Yeah. Well, just we're getting towards the end here, so it's this conversation I think has been really lively and really a lot of good insight, a lot of good info. But it's time to wrap it up. So final thoughts.
Final thought. There's 100 different ways, maybe 1,000 different ways that you can become an owner operator, move out of the driver's seat and start driving a business. It's up to you to find it. It's up to you to figure out where it's at. Yeah, I threw a Kevin Rutherford phrase out there. It's up to you to find it. It's up to you to figure out which best path fits you.
Right.
And move forward.
I would say the biggest thing my final thought would be that, don't take people's words as being loyal to being it. Do your own research. Find out what you need to find to make yourself work. Most of us put our pants on the same way. Some of us put them on and they scoot in them. Some of us put them on and they put one leg in at a time.
Yeah.
But the final thought is that you get them on the same way.
Yeah.
What works for one person may not work for you.
Right.
Don't count that as law because someone's been doing it 50 years. That's the way it's got to go. Okay, but they have some good points. Find out what fits you and keep that.
And I mean, I would echo that sentiment, which is take your time and do it right, and do it right the first time. Because if you mess up, and you've got your ducks in a row, maybe you've got some things that, some safety cushions that can help you. If you haven't done your homework and you haven't taken time to do it right, if you haven't done things like establish credit and learn the industry and understand what it takes, you set yourself up for failure.
I guess I'm going to sound a little cliche here, but most important things to me is, first off, everything's negotiable. Whenever you're going into this stuff, remember, whatever you're offered first, find out what else is out there, find out what you can and can't do, and negotiate better for yourself. 2, fail forward. Whenever something goes wrong, whenever something happens that sets you back, learn from it, and use that to project yourself forward. And quite honestly, I forgot my third point.
Always have 3 points.
So I guess we'll wrap it up there for this conversation in the Weigh-In series. So I'm going to make a plug for following us on Facebook or subbing us on YouTube so you can keep up with the conversation. So thanks a lot. It's been a really excellent conversation today.
Been a blast.
Yeah.
Thank you.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Guys.